Welcome to the Rant. We are live, and we have with us Jacob Zanola and Evan Altman, along with me, John Furlise. We've got the whole crew together. It's been a while.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, it feels like a long, I don't think it's been a month, but it feels like that at least. I know we've all been kind of, yeah, we're all scattered across the globe at one point or another, and travels, I think, have been in the way, but it's good. And it's good to be, it finally is feeling like it's actually baseball season, like writ large, across, even though it's been kind of cool in Chicago, but school's getting out. My kids are out of school as of now. Actually, they're not home yet, but the last day of school was today, and I think that's pretty much the case for just about everybody. The game times are later in the evenings. It's the Reds are in town. Starting to feel like it's like really, really baseball season. So I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, we are at the core of the beginning. And your birthday's right around the corner, Evan.
Monday. Yeah.
Nice. You'll be turning 35?
Yes, for the 11th straight year.
It's crazy how it works like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, you get
Jacob,
to I don't know if I'm even a 35-year-old. Like I don't even act that old so most of the time. So we'll see. Maybe it's my 16th straight 30th birthday. I don't know.
And Jacob, for those who don't know, you are up in Massachusetts for an internship with a Red Sox affiliate, right?
It's for the Cape Cod League. So the YD Red Sox, yeah. So all the Cape players, they start arriving tomorrow. Those of the players that are not in the regionals college playoffs start today in about an hour. But for the players that aren't in that, they'll start arriving. And then, season kicks off in 2 weeks from today, I believe.
Nice. It's exciting. Are you excited? Are you nervous?
A little bit of both. It's not as much nervous now that I've moved in and I've gotten used to my surroundings, moved into a new place, but excited to get things going. Interns report next Friday. I head up Fenway for 2 games on my way here. So that was nice to see a new park. And then I'm going back on Wednesday, I think, before the intern work starts, because they just announced Mike Trout's back and I want to see him one more time. So I'll head up there on Wednesday, but after that, 10, 15-hour work days, lots of busy.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah. Well, good luck to you. I'm sure it's going to be a summer. I mean, yeah, I can't even imagine. Yeah, exactly. But the Cubs, we are here to talk about the Cubs, and the Cubs, what I'm saying is a historic start. And the reason I'm saying that is because over the last 50 years, this is their third best start, or tied for their third best start in 50 years, at 35-21 through 56 games. And that's pretty impressive. I went back and I looked, obviously, at the years that they did as well or better. And of course, 2016 was the best. They were 40-16 in that year. Interestingly, in 1977, the Cubs started 37-19, and they finished 81-81.
Yikes.
If you want to be a true Cubs fan and really have fear in your heart, then look back to that 1977 team. I wasn't paying much attention to the Cubs back in 1977. Although
I don't remember that either. Yeah, I do not remember that season.
Was your dad even born in 1977?
No, he was not.
No. Great. Now I feel old. Awesome.
That's the goal. That's the goal of the podcast, is to make John feel old.
Yeah. That's really what we're here to do.
Yeah. Good. Cool. We're there.
But it is, I do want to throw this out there, though, because I think, I had said something. I got like a hair on my screen, so pardon me if it looks like I'm reaching. Oh, good. It didn't look like I didn't do that. There were a lot of folks because I think we mentioned it here. I was on the Wrigleyville Nation podcast and started talking about how this team had kind of a 2015-ish feel to it. Now we're seeing them do things they haven't done since 2016. And it's just funny how many people just have this visceral kind of angry reaction to anytime you try to. It's like, we're not saying it's a direct comparison. Nobody's saying hey, the Cubs are going to go to the NLCS. The Cubs are going to win the World Series this year. But there are absolutely benchmarks and little hints and things about this team, the comebacks that we saw against the Reds, the potent offense. The pitching is quite a bit more erratic, maybe, than what we saw, but the bullpen has come around since they've done. Like, there are things that there's young superstars that they've brought, or stars in the making that they brought up, who are starting to then succeed. Maybe if they didn't, right now PCA is the only one who's been there the whole time, but we're seeing Kate Horton come up and do well. We're seeing Matt Shaw come back and have made adjustments. Like, there are a lot of things about Justin Turner as a Grizzly veteran, like that they had in the past. I don't know. It's just grizzled, not really grizzly, but it's just funny because people
get really
upset about that stuff. And I'm like, no, I mean, the thing about it that really strikes me, though, that's more 2015-ish, is that this team is super, super fun to watch. I've really enjoyed this season, and I cannot say that that's been the case for the last several years, because it's kind of unexpected. And that's how the 15 team was versus the 16 team being transcendent and like wire to wire. Everybody knew they were going to win. It was a disappointment if they didn't. But this feels just kind of that more just pure fun when you watch them, and you just feel like they're going to do something to surprise you every game.
Right. Well, I think today's a perfect example. Obviously, I'm going to watch the game, but it's no longer yes, I'm going to watch the Cubs game because A, to write about it, and B, because there's a Cubs game. I'm like, I want to watch this game. Like, I want to watch this team. I want to see what Pete Crow-Armstrong does. I want to see how far Kyle Tucker can hit a baseball. Now, Wrigley weather has continued to be bad to begin the year, but still, like, this team is exciting. It's rejuvenated Cubs fans. Not that they weren't excited entering the year, but like you said, I figured the team would be good. I didn't think they would be 14 games over 500 right now. I didn't expect them to be that good. And I'm sure that we talked about it on the earlier podcasts. I'll have to go back and look for those exact quotes, but I believe I said 4 to 5 games under 500 leaving April, and I'll be fine. Now, I know it's done with May, but we've continued to build on that. And this rough stretch this rough stretch of teams, as in they're really bad. So on one end, yeah, we should beat up on them, but it kind of felt like a trap of like, okay, but what if we don't? What if this is when we go into a slump? We're still winning those games, and we've only lost 3 of these matchups against the bad teams. They're beating up on the bad teams, which we haven't always seen them do. They're racking up those wins so that if the offense goes really cold, because the offense has gone cold lately, I don't think anybody's denying that. But when the offense does inevitably go cold for a week or two, maybe longer later in the season, it's okay because we destroyed these weaker opponents in May.
Well, and that's the funny thing is that there are a lot of people who, especially in that Rockies series, because it was a relatively close series, games were close. People aren't satisfied with the sweep because the Cubs didn't win every game 10-1. And it's just kind of like, you got to remember, this is professional baseball. The difference from one team to another is very slim. And so when you go in and you play these teams, even if the Rockies, they only have 8 games. I mean, these guys have been pitching their whole lives. It's not that they don't know how to pitch. And so they're going to go out there and try their best and try their hardest. Of course, they're not just going to surrender. And the games were close. But the key that everyone has to remember is the Cubs won. And so that's the difference in baseball. Right. It can be a couple games, 1 game, 2 games at the end of the season out of 162. It's those little moments, those little games. And in the past few years, the Cubs would lose games like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, would you rather have, at the end of the season, would you rather have the better record or the higher run differential? Anybody's going to choose the better record. Like, do we want to see the Cubs just beating up on bad teams? Absolutely. Is it fun to have to go into extra innings or rely on a save in a 2-1 game against the Rockies? Like, no, that's not the kind of fun that we were just talking about. But at the end of the day, you have to win. And I think, to me, that's really the signal of a good team, is not even like, the huge come from behind wins against the Reds are great. But in order to be a good team, I don't care who you're playing against, you have to grind out some of those. You have to find ways to win, whether it is coming back from down 8-2 or whether it's you've got this bad team, because sometimes that's even tougher. Like, anytime, if you've ever played competitively at really any level, and there's every once in a while that'll happen. I've had it happen a lot. Basketball, it tended to happen, I feel like, more than ever. There'd be just this garbage team, and you'd go out there, and none of your shots are falling. Nothing's working, and this team just keeps hanging around. To me, that's tougher to overcome emotionally in a lot of cases, psychologically, than it is to be down 5 or 6 runs to a good team. Because at least that you're like, okay, that's fine. They're actually pretty good. Now all we got to do is kind of come back and do our thing. But it's almost more demoralizing to face a bad team and be like, why aren't we beating them? So to me, I look at that like I could give Mully on Mully and Hall was like, that's a weak sweep. Like, dude, it's a sweep. There's no such thing. You win 3 games in a row against any team. That's good. That's very good. And look at where they're at. So yeah, I think that stuff's all funny, but I don't know. Blake can maybe clip this and then people can make fun of me for it like they do with a lot of these clips because they don't have context. But honestly, I'd rather see that series of tight games against a bad team in the Rockies than perhaps even blowing out a good team. Again, because how much do you take away? If you blow a team out 10-1, 11-2, and then say you win one 12-3, right? You win those 3 games like that. That's awesome. It's super fun for the fans, but like, are the players really getting much out of that? Right? You're putting in all the subs. You didn't have to grind anything out. It was super easy. What did you learn? I feel like
you learn from the situations, right? Like
experience.
That situational awareness and being in those tight games. The Cubs are winning tight games this year at a over 600 clip. Last year they won. They went 23-28, which was a 451 clip, and that's a big difference. I mean, winning those close 1-run games is the difference between a 90+ win team and a low 80s win team, right?
And I want to mention there was one 1-run game in this series, which was the Cubs and Rockies with Shaw's walk-off. So that was a perfect example, I think. JD, and I want to say it was the 10th inning, maybe the 11th. I was the 11th, pardon me, when the Rockies scored, and he said, I don't think 1 run is going to be enough to beat this Cubs team. That's the nice part. Yes, I get it's the Rockies, but like Evan said, they're major leaguers. So like they've done enough to get up to the majors. They're not the best of the major leaguers, but they're still pretty good. They're still throwing high 90s. Like they got some guys that can throw gas, and their bullpen is good. This pitching staff is good. It just doesn't help that their offense doesn't know how to hit a baseball. But when they're facing these guys, it's like, okay, this is a decent pitching staff. The Cubs are better. The Cubs can come back. At no point in that series did I feel the Cubs aren't going to come back, no matter what. And I think we saw it with the Red Series where they came back with McGuire's home run and just the shootout near the end where it was just so many runs being scored. The Cubs are never out of it. And that's the great thing about baseball. We've seen it in basketball with the Pacers and Knicks series. It's like, yeah, they're down 20. Okay, give them 3 minutes. And all of a sudden, whoa, they're winning. And so that's the great thing about this Cubs team is you can never count them out. The Red Sox have lost, I believe, 14 or 15 1-run games this year. Oof. The Red Sox are a mess. They're a disaster. So many things I could talk about forever about how that is just a mismanaged organization. But they're losing those games. The Cubs are not. And so it's the Red Sox have that talent, but they're at the bottom of the standings. The Cubs are actually winning those games. And like Evan said, I have to imagine, I haven't played baseball in a bit, but it really helps the development of players more when you're winning by 1 run and in those close games compared to, hey, Shaw, we're up by 10, go up and try to put up a competitive at-bat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Cubs are still scoring a ton of runs, all things considered, when you look at where they are. They put up 330 runs so far this year, which is the most in all of baseball still, even though they've only scored, I don't know, like 7 or 8, however many runs they ended up scoring against the Marlins. So that's pretty impressive. And it's going to be very interesting to see once the weather starts to warm up, because we know that balls fly further when it's warmer out. And it's just, I don't know how many runs is this team going to score when, in June, July, and August.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, like, it'll sure help if the wind stops blowing in. Today it's not hard in, but it's still blowing left to right, slightly in. So that's part of the reason we've seen that. And there were a few, although I think it was I want to say it was actually going back. It wasn't at Wrigley, but it was the game at Great American when they were facing Andrew Abbott, who they're up against today, Friday, if you're listening to it live, or a close approximation to that, where they were hitting balls like 100 plus miles an hour routinely. They picked up 6 hits. Yeah. Abbott had not given up 6 hits, but there were like 6 balls that were warning track to the wall at 104, 106, 108 that were just barely staying in the park. And so I think, that's part of it too, is you have to look at that stuff. There's, and I might be going back a little bit on what I said earlier, right? At the end of the day, it's did you win or not? The results really, really matter. But there are points at which you can look at that process. And this kind of goes back again to the Dansby Swanson thing. When I wrote early in the season about how Dansby Swanson was getting hosed by bad luck because he was hitting the ball hard all the time, everybody's like, no, he sucks because he's swinging and missing. I'm like, look, process over results. Let this thing bear out. Shocking that now that we stand here a month and a half or so later, Swanson has turned things around completely, but he's continued to hit the ball really, really hard. And he had a game the other day where he hit one like 108 straight to the shortstop and then like 104 straight to the left fielder. But that's the thing I think we see with this team is that outside of a few of those aberrant games when like none of them fall, they're all up and down the lineup. And there's kind of 2 different things. They're all consistently hitting the ball hard, but we're also seeing these good approaches. Like Jacob, you mentioned Shaw's walk-off. And he said he went into that at bat. It was not a hard shot by any stretch, but he went into it saying, see it deep, let it get deep, go to the opposite field, which is the approach that he's taken since he came back up. We're seeing a ton of opposite field hits from him. And that's what I love, that kind of mature approach from a rookie who had struggled earlier, combined with these other guys just saying, again, a guy like Swanson who didn't get down on himself. He got moved down in the order, but he just kept doing the same thing, which is hitting the ball hard. Eventually that stuff starts to fall. So that's what I really like about this team is that they don't, if they do have a couple of bad games that kind of get them down, whether it's individually or collectively, they don't allow that to define them. They don't go trying to change things up and move the lineup all over or try to fix the approach or whatever. It's right. They understand that they're good. And if they keep up with what they're doing, it will eventually work out in their favor. And that's a little bit different too from I think what we've seen kind of from these past few teams that get a little sketchy and skittish when things go wrong.
Right. And there's not any big holes in this lineup. Reese McGuire, I'd say, is the one hole when he's catching. Yes, I know he had 2 home runs. Hasn't really done much since. But he's a serviceable guy back there. And he's throwing out guys like crazy. So he's good defensively back there. I wanted to mention, you mentioned the bad luck. I took a moment on May 24th. So early, I want to say it was Sunday, without looking at a calendar. But Saturday. So that was Saturday. Okay. So in Cincinnati, in the second inning, the Cubs, all 3 of their outs had a 500 or higher expected batting average. So more than half the time, it's going to be a hit. Dansby Swanson, a 786 expected batting average. PCA, a line out, 913 expected batting average. And then Amaya, 522. Then you go to the third inning. Shaw, 356. Tucker, 910. And then Suzuki, 291. So the 291 and 356 aren't crazy, but these are more likely than not going to be hits. And you mentioned Shaw and waiting to sort of hit that to the opposite field and how that's something he's been focusing on. They showed that on the marquee broadcast, I believe it was Wednesday, and they showed how he's really waiting back. Like he's been a different player. I wanted to focus on how good he's been since coming back. He's played 9 games since returning to the majors. 5 of them he's had 2 hits or more. He's up over 100 WRC plus. He's been incredible.
He's back up for sure. I don't think there's any going back to AAA. I think whatever he needed to adjust and address down in Iowa, he did, and that's great to see. One of the things
the defense has been,
yeah, exactly. The one thing the Cubs needed there.
Well, yeah, there was. I got to point that out too because there was someone, a fine commenter, follower on our Facebook page who shared on one of those an image of himself, and he was seated at the Marlins game behind the third base dugout, I believe, and was just like, Shaw doesn't have the arm for it. I can tell from his warm-up throws. It's like, okay, hold my beer because, and I'm sure a lot of people are like, yeah, but he bounced those. Like, I don't know if you've ever taken a deep throw like that, but that's actually what you're supposed to do, rather than airmailing it, especially when you get those true hops if you're playing on turf, or those major league fields are not some high school gopher ridden, pockmarked play. Like, that's really what you're supposed to do. But he's made what, 3 or 4 plays in the last just 3 or 4 games.
It was like 3 straight games.
Hard to his glove side, making the play, or I'm sorry, to his arm side. So past the third base line in some of those situations, whether he's having to get deep or go up, like Manny Machado-esque, if I may.
Yes.
To where he's flagging that thing down, making the throw off balance. And my thing is, people talk about arm strength, whatever, but I will equate that to an NFL quarterback. Yeah, do you want to have the deep ball? But when you get to the highest level, the most important thing is you got to be accurate. And he's making these off balance throws that are on the money over to first base.
He's falling down. He's falling down. There was one
where down on the one.
Yeah, there was one where you look and he's like at the end of this throw, he's laying down, he's taking a nap, and it was right on the money. I love that Machado. There's that one play, I don't remember who was against, but he just runs over the third base line and he's able to make a moving throw right over third base. I love that comparison. It's just, we knew his offense would be good. We knew it would eventually be good once he got some things fine-tuned. The defense, I don't think anybody thought, or at least I didn't think it would be this good. Will it be this good every day? No. We just needed to be serviceable. But that plus defense is a benefit on top of the benefits of his excellent offense since his return.
Yeah. And that's what Mike Scioscia said about him, though, during the Premier 12 tournament. Scioscia raved about the work he had put in on his defense and said at the time, right, this was during the winter, he was like, this kid can be a major league third baseman. He can be the Cubs starting third baseman, not about his bat or any of that, which obviously we know is outstanding. But I really, really like that this isn't like he took this and said, well, hey, it's a spot, I'll go play over there. Like they talked about that too. Like, he's out there an hour before batting practice when he was with Iowa, working on his defense there. So this is, again, and this, scouts I've talked to have raved about his makeup and his work ethic. And I think, again, sometimes we take that stuff for granted because there are guys who we've seen come up who struggled and couldn't figure it out and couldn't put it together because they just had never struggled and never knew how to put up with that. But I think Shaw is a guy who's really going to learn from those things. But it's just exciting to watch him out there. And I think the thing we'd still, I think, all love to see more slug from him. But he's whether he reaches on a fielder's choice and then steals a bag, right, to get that extra
fast.
base. He's letting the ball travel. He's dumping shots into right field. He's making those plays at third. But there's a lot of little stuff that I think if you looked at a box score is not going to show up. But that when you get down to it and you actually watch the game and see how he impacts the game in different ways, I think that's one of the strongest things. And again, that's what I really like about this team is that you have guys, and I would point to Kyle Tucker as a similar, just having him on the roster, whether he's producing or not. Because as you guys probably recall, prior to that Miami series, people were all freaked out about him.
DFA him, get him off the team.
Yeah, get rid of him. Trade him now. There's definitely some account with a whole lot of alts that was sharing with everybody that the Cubs need to trade him if they're not in contention, which is dumb for more than one reason, not the least of which is the fact that they're in first place and have one of the best records in baseball. However, just having that guy in Tucker there, the threat of him makes those other players better, right? I think because they know and they see that. Same thing can be said for PCA, what he's doing now. And again, I think with Shaw, there's a lot of little intrinsic stuff that just is not only exciting to watch, but I think that it lifts up the team. When you see a young guy coming up and doing those things, it's exciting if anybody has a walk-off. But when it's the young guy who gets his first one, like that's just a whole different level. So that's been super, super cool.
Let's talking about a young guy though. I want to shift a little bit to Pete Crow-Armstrong because I think we're remiss if we don't talk about Pete and the performance that he's been putting on this so far this year. And like before the season, no one that I know of, maybe there is someone in the world who thought Pete Crow-Armstrong was going to have the type of year he is having right now. But listen, he's got 15 home runs. And I think if you would have said Pete Crow-Armstrong will finish 2025 with 15 home runs, you would have been like, yeah, that seems about right. Maybe it's a little light. But I don't think anybody was thinking he was going to, be the type of player he's been so far this year. And is there some regression ahead? God, I don't know. But he's 23 years old. This is his second season. Really, didn't really play a full season last year. And I mean, we all knew he was good. But what he's doing right now is next level superstar Hall of Fame, like potentially going down in the annals of the best Cubs players ever. If this type of performance was to continue, that's a lot, right? Because he's like I said, he's 23. But wow, I mean, and we talked at the beginning of the season, before the season, that the Cubs just needed that left-handed power bat, right? They needed a power bat, and they got it with Tucker. But boy, we didn't know Pete Crow-Armstrong was going to be that left-handed power bat too. So now they've got two left-handed power bats in their lineup. What do we make of what Pete Crow-Armstrong is doing? And I mean, like it's even hard to understand, really.
He's amazing. And there's been several people, as I'm scrolling Twitter the last few days, or X, the everything app, whatever you call it, and they're like, yeah, I've been watching the Cubs a lot, and this Pete Crow-Armstrong kid's good. Now, obviously, everyone knows that, but I saw more than one comment that said, some Yankees fans, they said, yeah, when the Yankees aren't on, I've been turning on the Cubs to watch Pete Crow-Armstrong. That's pretty cool. The Cubs haven't had that guy in quite a bit. And I'm sure Evan can talk more about this, but the chase rate is worrisome. Obviously, he has the worst chase rate in baseball at 44%. And then his whiff rate, strikeout rate, he doesn't walk a lot. So some people are like, yeah, so the aggression's coming. The way I look at it is he's putting up these numbers. He's putting up an 866 OPS with this chase rate. Honestly, dude, just keep chasing as much as you want. Then if you tell me he will put up an 850 OPS the rest of his career, but strike out half the time, okay, cool, whatever. But if he can improve on that, like Chris Bryant's first year, he almost set records for how much he was striking out, but he was still really good, one Rookie of the Year. And then he cut down on the strikeouts, won MVP, got even better. So I don't see this as a negative of he's due to regress. I see it as a, hey, improve on that, and he can be even better than an MVP candidate, because I know Blake talked about it last week, and I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. I don't know if you guys saw the clip. It was Facebook loved it. They were quite angry about it, as always. He said, if this is a home run award, then give the MVP to Shohei Ohtani. But it's not. It's the most valuable player. Not only is Pete Crow-Armstrong doing really, really, really well offensively, he's the best defensive player in baseball. So if you were to give out the MVP if the season ended today, not only is Pete Crow-Armstrong getting votes, I wouldn't be shocked if he wins it.
Yeah, I would be shocked if he wins it, because I think everyone's going to vote for Shohei Ohtani regardless.
Right. Well,
to your point, I think
there's significant bias against. Yeah, either whether it's in favor of Ohtani, whether it's against PCA, because he still hasn't gotten the love nationally outside of a few folks. I think when we're looking at those writers, they're going to have their biases, but no, I agree completely that I don't look at his down numbers, but that's the reason it's really funny, because that also goes back to the point of like, hey, he did really well in leadoff, and I love how people were citing this, like, look how he's done really well. His OBP is this, and like, yeah, his on base percentage, his on base was like 415 because he was batting 406. Like, he's not walking at all. So the small sample stuff, like, he's a run producer, but he's not, despite everybody looks at him, and this is like a 1985 view of the game, right? Oh, he's fast, he can steal bases, he needs to be the leadoff guy. Like, in point of fact, no, he does not, because if your on base is only 20 points higher than your batting average or wherever that falls, then you getting on base is entirely dependent upon you hitting the ball and reaching base safely in that regard. And I think, and it's not a knock on him, it's just to say that his style of play, until and unless it changes, is not as well suited to the leadoff role. I think that's the other thing, and we can look at Hap being a little streaky, whatever. But again, PCA batting down in the lineup where he can clean up, when he can give dudes fits. I think, to me, again, the chase is fine. I don't worry about that within the season, because you're not going to go. Certain guys notwithstanding, right? Miguel Amaya made a change to his swing, and PCA did make a change to his swing, right? Mechanics are one thing, and you still don't like to tweak with those too much during the season, but you're not really going to see a guy like overhaul his entire plate approach during the course of a season, Like that generally doesn't happen unless pitchers really start getting to the point where they're not giving him anything to hit. But we've seen him adjust. The knock early was he couldn't hit the high heat. Pitchers kept throwing it to him. What did he do? He adjusted. Now I think we're going to see, we saw it the other day, a lot of breaking balls, really trying to drive that back foot breaking ball on him and really get him to chase. We saw him kind of flail at a couple of those. But the thing is, he's got just superior athleticism and body control to where he may chase a lot, but he can still get his bat. He dug one out of the dirt on what looked like a driver out on the driving range, right? To be able to get one out. So he can do all kinds. He's kind of got that. Again, people are going to get upset about this comp, I'm sure, because they're thinking it's direct, but he feels a lot to me like that Vlad Guerrero Sr. kind of bad ball hitter. I'm just going to go swing at whatever. It may not look aesthetically pleasing to you because I'm not hitting the ball in exact spots where I'm supposed to. I'm not taking as many walks as I should, but that's not who he is. And I think unless you want him to be a prototypical leadoff hitter, which I don't, then you don't worry about it. But let me say this, because I want to bring this up while I'm at the end of my rambling. So prior to this year, so PCA's got 15 homers, 15 stolen bases. Prior to this, only 3 players over 5 individual seasons. So Sandberg in 90, Sosa in 94, 95, 96 before he got really juiced and stopped stealing bases at all. And then 18 Javi Baez. Those are the only Cubs ever with 15 plus home runs and 15 plus steals prior to the All-Star break. PCA's there, and he's got 41 games left before the All-Star break. So, like, what he's doing is, I mean, we could call it unprecedented. Other guys have done it, but nobody's done it at this kind of pace. And the other thing to me, what I'll say is, now I promise I'll shut up after this, is maybe the power regresses a little bit, but he's honestly not even stealing bases at the same clip that we would maybe have expected. And so if the power goes away and those home runs turn into singles and doubles, well, guess what? Then the legs kick in, and now we see more stolen bases from him. So he still creates havoc. Like, he does it in so many different ways that he's a whack-a-mole, right? If you figure out a way to stop this part of his game, 3 others are going to pop up.
He's a different talent.
Yeah, he's just a different type of player that I don't recall ever seeing anyone like this before, where he's got a 3.8% walk rate, which is shockingly low. His on-base percent is 303. It's like, that's not great. I mean, you look at the top 20, 30 players. They're all higher, to your point, Evan. But when he gets on base, he causes just total chaos. What he does in the outfield, he is one of the best defenders in Major League Baseball. And it's just, he's just doing it in ways that we've never seen before. And we've seen Javier Baez, who had, kind of like this swing and miss stuff, and, kind of a similar player in terms of the level of excitement that he brought to the game. But it's just with the power that Pete Crow-Armstrong is showing, the fact that he's only 23 years old. And to your point, Jacob, yeah, there are some things that he's not doing what you would consider traditionally well, but he's only going to get better, right? He's only going to get better in those areas. And so I think that's where it's really intriguing to think I want to see what Pete Crow-Armstrong is after the All-Star break.
And the chase is bad, but really his only, and I don't have statistical evidence to back this up, so people online don't flame me for this, but it seems like the only big weakness is down and away, because you talked about him golfing out of baseball. Sarah Langs tweeted the other day, and she said that the golfing home run that you mentioned against the Rockies was 1.08 feet above the ground. That's the second lowest pitch for a home run this year. The lowest, also Pete Crow-Armstrong,
and he got that out. It wasn't just barely a home run. Oh, that was way out.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is and that's just kind of a cool stat of like, whoa, that has to be the lowest this year. No, he did it even lower. The pitcher basically bounced it, and PCA is like, no, I'm going to take you deep. And so not really, you're not going to say he's the best player ever because of he can hit low pitches, but it's kind of a neat little stat nugget that it was the second lowest, and he also owns the first. There's nowhere you can pitch to him because you think, yeah, he'll chase, but if he makes contact, he's going to make contact hard. And then, like you said, John, create absolute havoc on the base paths.
Mm-hmm.
I did. So first off, Matt Mervis just got DFA'd.
Fun player to watch.
Oh, that
but
sucks.
Yeah.
Wow.
The starting rotation for this series, I don't know, John, if you wanted to go into this in depth later, but Ben Brown is not scheduled for tomorrow. They have it as TBD. Now, he got shelled by the Reds last Saturday. Wasn't sure if we wanted to talk about that too much, but maybe Chris Flexen tomorrow. I don't have any insight on that. I just think it's interesting that they're possibly skipping over Brown in the rotation.
Well, they did up until about an hour ago. They had today's as TBD before they put Colin Ray in there, which I also thought was odd because, I mean, it was Ray's turn up, although he had his worst start of the season in his last start as well. But I did note in that Ben Brown, when I was kind of writing about which of the Cubs do there, that was one of them. I kind of like the idea of using Flexen as a long opener, like not the 1 inning opener, but maybe give him a couple of frames. Let Brown get hot, because if you look at Brown's numbers, he is awful in the first and then the 4th and 5th innings. He's really good in the middle. Now, the troublesome part is that's still his, whether you put him in the 3rd or the 4th, whatever, it's still his first inning. Is that bad? But I feel like he's a guy who he takes a little while to get going. And we've seen that kind of with his command and with everything else. Is like, give him kind of a sim first inning in the bullpen or second inning, whatever it is. Let Flexen get him, because Brown's not really an efficient pitcher anyway. But if you can use those 2 guys to get you 6 innings, maybe 7, I think that's a decent way to go, because I still don't think people are like, oh, you got to put him in the bullpen. Like, okay, folks, but Brown's first inning that he pitches is still bad. So putting him in the bullpen doesn't actually fix anything. You still need those longer outings for him to get integrated. And that's what we've seen. Like, he's money in those. And they're like, he'll have a bad first inning and then
the middle innings
for the next 2. And then it's like the last inning that he goes through. You got to have that short leash, but you got to figure out, how do you get him over? It was like Kyle Hendricks a few years ago. Remember the first inning of death with Hendricks, where it's like, dude, just please survive the first inning, then you'll be fine. But it's like, how do you get him over that hump? Maybe an opener is the solution there. So I'm interested to see how they handle that.
Yeah. And if there's one thing that I'm really concerned about, it's the Cubs starting pitching. I think if the Cubs are going to make a serious run in the playoffs, they're going to have to trade for a pitcher at the deadline, especially with Steele out for the season. I think Imanaga is going to be okay, I think, right? But it just feels like they're one short.
At least
in the starting
at least
pitching.
1 or 2. I could argue you trade for 2.
Yeah, I got flamed for that too. Because somebody told me, because I said when John and I were on the one, I was like, this rotation's not scary, right? And people are like, well, Imanaga's coming back. I'm like, okay, cool. Even with him, like, Jameson Taillon scares no one. Colin Ray scares no one. Matt Boyd has been really good. He's been very consistent. Still doesn't scare anyone. Yeah, and that's kind of the thing. Is when is the last time, like, this dude is creeping up already? I think he's already thrown more innings than he did in either of the last 2 seasons at least. He hasn't gone over 100 innings in several years. And so we're not looking at right now. We can't focus on right now. And by the way, the other people were like, you didn't know what to expect from Arrieta, Lester, and Hendricks. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, boy, that's some revisionist stuff, because those guys, that was a really good 3, especially by the time we got to
just to be fair, I think we didn't know what to expect from Jason Hamill. And to me, Ray and Boyd are like both having Jason Hamill type seasons.
They're Hamills. They're plural. They're Hamill plural, not to be confused with Cole Hamills. So I don't want to get out ahead of myself that far. But yeah, there's no ace. There's no one right now. And I'll put Imanaga in that group too, because this season that he's having so far is certainly a far cry from last year in terms of his command and everything else. There's nobody on this roster that I'm looking at from a starting pitch. Actually, Cade Horton might be the best one at this point if he can continue. But I don't look at anybody and say, yep, that's the guy. That's your Jake Arrieta in 15 or even in 16, even though that wasn't as good, or that's my game 1 guy, and I believe he can be your game 1 guy. The Cubs do not have that on the roster right now, to where you can say 1 through 3 in a playoff series, I trust these 3 to beat the other team's 3.
Yeah, when Horton came up at first, it was kind of like, okay, cool, he'll be up for a few starts, then go back down when Imanaga is back. No, you're not sending this kid down. He's been fantastic. Mitch Keller is someone that will get more onto this when we get closer to trade deadline, but I just want to throw that name out there so that when they do trade for him and it looks like I'm a genius, Mitch Keller, May 30th, mark it right now. I would love for them to trade for him. Maybe David Bednar too. Take a flyer on him, although he's struggled, locked in against the struggling Diamondbacks. But you got to trade for at least one, maybe two starters. Probably move Brown to the bullpen or Iowa. Colin Ray too. But there's also several weeks until Imanaga gets back. So hopefully these guys continue to produce. Well, not Brown, he's not producing. But hopefully Ray and Horton continue to produce, and Boyd like they have been. But there's always a chance they don't. So saying right now, yeah, when Imanaga gets back, let's send Brown down. Dude, we got 3 weeks left. Like, we got time for a lot of things to happen. A lot can happen in 3 weeks.
And what the Cubs have really done impressively over the past month is their bullpen has been just really good, right? And they started out, through April, they had a 4.76 ERA. And in May, the bullpen ERA is 2.67, right up at the top of all baseball. And so that's really turned around. And part of that was just kind of working through some of the guys who didn't belong there in the first place, and getting those guys off the roster and bringing some, figuring out who they could rely on. Keller, for example, a guy who Jacob, why don't you talk about him?
Brad Keller has been fantastic. His sweeper is, the advanced metrics on that are amazing, but he's became the 8th inning guy. He is a guy that I kind of wanted him to close, but now Palencia has been fantastic. I saw a TikTok edit last night of Palencia, and it said that it reminded them of 2023 Adbert Alzolay, and that made me sad. But they're not wrong. Palencia has been fantastic after that one rough Marlins outing. So if you can really go Keller, who, if Palencia is down, you can have Keller close and probably move him back to the 7th, or maybe Hodge to the 7th when Hodge does inevitably return. But yeah, Keller, Drew Pomeranz. Drew Pomeranz has yet to give up a run in a Cubs uniform. Before this, he hadn't hit the major league mound since 2021. Since 2021, he hadn't hit the major league mound. So he's been fantastic. Palencia, like I said, is throwing gas. He's throwing 101, 102. Chris Flexen has been good. Caleb Thielbar, after 2 bad outings at the very beginning of the season, where even I was like, this dude does not have it, because he was part of that big Diamondbacks implosion. After that, he's been electric. And so there's a lot of guys, and now you have Genesis Cabrera coming in. But Ian Happ on the compound the other day talked about him and Dakota were like, it's kind of unique to have this many lefties in the bullpen now. So now Council can go to Thielbar. Luke Little may come up eventually. I'm still iffy because he seems like a quadruple A type of player. But either way, you have Pomeranz and Thielbar, 2 lefty weapons that you can go to late in the innings. Pomeranz and Keller are really my 2 most trusted names in this bullpen that at the beginning of the season, we were all freaking out, rightfully so. And now it's been the amount of scoreless games they've gone, not in a row, but in May. I'll have to go back and total it up. It's incredible. They're just not giving up any runs. It's like when I do my daily recap, the starter gave up 3, and that's all the team scored. Bullpen shut him down again. The next day, the bullpen shut him down again and again and again. So it's that starting pitching that we need to fix, but they've really figured the bullpen out, and they have more names. Riley Martin, when are we going to give him a shot? Probably when an injury comes up. Tyson Miller, what's his future? No one knows. But the bullpen's really gotten into a groove, which is exciting. And now it's just the starters. We're narrowing the issues that we have, which is good because we need to narrow them for the trade deadline. We have a hole at third. We have a hole at starter. We have a hole at closer. Now we found our closer for now. We have closing options. We found our third baseman. We're narrowing this gap of weakness to the starting pitching. We've lasered it in on the starting pitching. Now use the trade deadline to acquire some studs and then win the division and make a deep run into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to be costly.
If they do get Mitch Keller, then they can have Keller and Keller, and we can get sponsorship from the law firm, something like that.
We could. When I drove
there you go.
To Massachusetts, I passed
Nice.
a Keller law firm,
well, hey,
and I wanted to take a picture of it, but I was like, that works. That we'll call him. We'll call him up and see what we can do.
Yeah.
I saw one of those too. I'm trying to remember where that was. I can't remember. I'll have
They've got the stern-looking guy in the ads when they're just like, "Oh, sure, we got to get her. Oh, she's got Keller and Keller. Oh, we better settle." You know?
Yeah, like, okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they wear they can wear the Keller Cubs jerseys into the law firm.
Yeah.
I love it.
So the Cubs start a series against the Reds at Wrigley Field in just a little bit here, and then they go on the road for quite a while. They've got 3 against the Nationals, 3 against the Tigers, which I'm really excited to see that series. And then 3 against the Phillies. So that'll be really kind of a test of their mettle against the Tigers and the Phillies back to back before they get back home to Wrigley Field. And it'll be interesting to see how they do against those teams because, you know, the Cubs against the Mets, they dropped 2 out of 3. Against the Giants, they dropped 2 out of 3. It was, you know, it wasn't exactly how we wanted those games and series to go. And they had an opportunity to win more than just those games. But it really feels like looking ahead to that Tigers and Phillies series is that it'd be nice to see them get 2 out of 3 in at least one of those, preferably both. And I think it's going to be tough to do.
Yeah, we're kind of out of the easy schedule now, it seems. Or almost.
Especially with the way Detroit's playing. That's the crazy thing is I don't think anybody, I mean, obviously Tarek Skubal, who just had an insane outing the last time out. I don't know if you guys saw that. It was like a 94 pitch complete game in which he threw like 71 of his 94 pitches for strikes. The last one of which was like 102.6.
How?
His last pitch of the game? Like, huh? So
I think we miss him. We miss him.
That which would be ideal.
Yes.
But it, you know, what I would love to see is like for Javi to just go ham in that series, but for the Cubs to still win at least 2 of 3. You know, just to kind of have fun with it. And, you know, the Javi PCA, the fact that they got traded for one another, that Javi's been playing a lot of center field. Like there's the storylines are kind of fun around that.
Can PCA rob a Javi home run?
Oh, dude. How about vice versa? They should just rob each other.
That would be so fun. That would be amazing.
Can you imagine? Like, the people would go nuts. So I'm all for it. Like, let's just have fun with this thing, right? We said this team was fun. Let's have some fun.
Enjoy it. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Good show, guys. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Please follow us everywhere we are, which is everywhere. Socials, you name it. Go to CubsInsider.com, read the content, be our friends, and be nice. And
try to be nice. Yeah.
Care of each other.
Especially on Facebook, please.
Peace out.